It's really magical because I was typing away furiously, kermiting as as Bina calls it, uh, just sorting stuff and getting stuff out of the way and ready. And so, because Bina left and she's gonna come back, so I thought, oh, it's Bina and somebody else is gonna come, maybe. So I said, wow, okay, this is all exciting. So, uh, but now this is even more exciting.
It's
So
me. Yeah.
I
So
love it. I love it. I
I,
love it. I love that you come and you feel free to come and all this. So
well, I figured I would check and see, make sure I wasn't
fantastic,
interrupting
fantastic.
anything. But
Thank you.
I'm here because I was thinking, and got on this big time thinking train, and I thought, okay, if I'm doing this right now, I might as well just get on the phone so that we can talk about this together.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Let me just let them know to not come now.
Well, if no, I mean if
No. It's totally fine. It's somebody I connected with a long time ago, and they, you know, I'm truly happy to make an effort. But people have to make an effort also on their end.
right.
And
Really.
this person didn't really, they just wanted to keep indulging in the self pity. So they left and sort of did their own thing, whatever. And I never really heard much from them again because I started pressing to say, look, you got to take action. You got to take action. And so now this is a long time afterwards. So I said, well, I'm assuming things are good. Says, well, at first it didn't go well, and then it sort of worked out. So okay, so
Mhm.
everything's good. So if they come or don't come, it's okay either way.
Well,
Uh,
genuinely, I do not mind at all coming back at my
no,
normal.
I realize that, but no, you get priority by far. Sorry,
I
I'm
appreciate
I
it.
am biased and I discriminate and I feel no remorse or compunctions, so no problem. Yeah.
Oh dear.
You
Well,
got to sometimes discriminate, right?
it's true. It's true.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. It's a
how
good
are
skill to have.
how are you? How was your weekend?
I'm excited because I got one so far, and where there can be one, there can be more.
Did you try?
I I will show you what I'm jabbering about. There we go.
No, I love it. Oh my gosh,
So
that
I
is
yeah,
amazing. I love it.
the post that I have, I think it's the pinned post right now in group. I posted it on a bunch of different groups, like the writers groups and artist groups and children's book groups and illustrator groups. I've got one response so far. So
That is amazing. I love it. Oh my gosh. And I love the edgy.
a very different hedgie with this triangular nose. It's very cool. It's very cool. Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that Hedgie is still purple and that the cat is still blue.
That also, wow, I didn't notice that in a way. Yes, that's true. That's true. He's subconsciously affected by your drawing. I
You're
love it. I love it. So he said he'll maybe draw another one. Now he does. This is an illustrator. He contacted via the writers group, which is interesting, and he's done some poems with illustrations. I think for kids.
fun.
So yeah, but I did say draw as your single digit eight self, and he has. So this is great. Yeah, yeah.
That is so awesome.
So this is exciting. So I added it to the version with your pictures as a little small one.
Ooh, perfect.
Yeah, but then I'll use it especially since it's the first one now, the book of the individual ones, with a different one for each by each a different reader.
Right.
I'll use this one there or the other one, whichever one. I'll use one of his. Let's put it
Yes.
that.
I love it. I love that illustration.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. These give me such joy,
yeah.
and this is what I felt. You set the tone, and with all your pictures, every single one gives me joy. And this I found it's really awesome. I look at some of the like in that I Am Dreaming, right, which is now obviously professional illustrations
Right.
in for children's stuff. Um, not all give me joy.
Right.
Some are like, okay, I appreciate your art, a lot of skill here, but right. So some do give me joy, and some I appreciate, which is different, but none come close to the joy that I get from your drawings.
I love that. I'm glad it
And this one too. This gives me joy. It's the celebration of the childlike, the child side. This is important. It's what I'm really after. And now, by the collaborative, the draw along, there's a moreness to it. Like I was just saying to Connie, I don't know if you know Connie or not, but she does woman stuff and retreats and workshops and stuff. And she just, I sent it to everybody that I have in my mailing list. It's not a very big mailing list, or at least it's my personal context, people that I know and connect to. So she said, good. She likes the idea, and just being encouraging because
Yeah.
I met her through the workshop I did, the Airbnb workshop. Anyway, so I said, yes, this could be a workshop going through the story, and specifically 2 points to the workshop. It could be focused on connecting to your child side and recovering perfectionism. Like you did it. See, I mean, how it came via you when I recommended it was precisely because you were focused on that. To do a workshop on that, where now you've got a bunch of adults reading a children's story and everybody's together drawing these children from your child side. This would be fantastic, I feel. And of course, for me, the idea is when you read this as a parent with your children, you drawing along with them, or a teacher, you drawing along with them. They also get to see you participate. And I think this is a very magical thing. And, that celebration of the idea behind it is there's no right or wrong to drawing.
Right. Exactly.
That's it. There's no right or wrong to drawing. And in other words, the book is not just sharing the story and hedgy and all of the subtle things that come out and just the fun, but also it is promoting this no right or wrong to drawing. So, and it is promoting the idea of drawing as a mechanism for you to express yourself and share yourself, right? And I think this is a magical, powerful thing. Yes. I mean, regardless of the fact that I don't necessarily draw, it doesn't mean that I cannot see it for the magical power that it has. It's like journaling. It's the same thing. It's visual journaling, right? So, yeah. So I want to, that's part of what the edgy books are now promoting also. Besides just, when I thought of this your drawings inspired me so much, and the whole thing's like, wow, let's take this to another level. So, yeah. Magic coming from it. Just too awesome. Yeah. Yes, too awesome. All right, let's see. All right. Okay. So everybody's okay. Everybody's happy. I like that. Everybody's sorted. Yeah. Now I can give full attention to Erica. I like doing that. Yes. I was thinking earlier, today, I don't know, somewhere the poster said, man, hurry up, it's Erica time. And so see, it came. My intent came true. You came earlier. I love this. What's happening, Erica? What's happening?
Would you get out of there? My goodness. Oh.
Is that
Aurora.
Aurora?
Yes, I have this really nasty green vitamin drink that I'm trying to drink that she's very interested in, and she keeps like coming over and trying to lick it. And
Wow. I've seen some fantastic videos of like this Linda, I think her name is. I don't know. I think I've seen more than one of hers, but she has her dog, and the dogs are kind of on their paws on a counter, and the pup and the son of the dog and their son, and then she gives them taste tests, and she puts the comments in with the broccoli and stuff. It's too precious. It's too brilliant. So I was thinking maybe you should do this with Aurora, and then nope, sorry, I'm not gonna have that again. Yeah.
I'm telling her, you don't want this. I promise.
Right. But she used to taste it for herself, I guess. But what's fascinating in that particular video? There was something that really intrigued me, but I forgot what it is now. No, it was a related one. I don't know if you saw it, where she put the person has a bowl, prearranged, obviously, and then she shows them one, pellet of something, whatever, and she puts it down and puts the bowl on it and moves the two around, right? and then they point to the bowl with a one in,
Right.
and they pick this up, and then they pick the other one up, and it's like a whole bunch of the food. You've seen that one,
Yeah.
and the faces,
Yeah,
like,
their faces are like,
what the fuck? I mean, really, seriously, you did this? I mean, are you a human being, or what kind of a monster are you? I
right.
thought this was incredible. Now, the thing that fascinated me in that video was a whole bunch of things, because again, looking outside the frame. I practice this all the time, right? So, for instance, in a murder mystery, you've got what was her name, Angela Lansbury.
Love that Murder, She Wrote. I love
Murder
that.
She Wrote, right? Okay. So, of course, when they have a dinner, somebody's going to get murdered, right? That's it. I mean, that's just, well, any detective show. If there's a dinner, somebody's dying, right? Okay.
Right.
But that's because you know the frame. But what I wanted to say was, when it comes to 5 minutes to the hour, the murder is about to be revealed. And also, that who the murderer is, because they're the special guest star, right?
True. Always.
Yeah.
No.
So what I'm saying is that when you take things that are outside the frame of the story, you can use that to affect inside the frame. Yes? Yeah, because you have to think, well, the producers, and this is the story, and it's not going to carry on over till next week, and so on and so forth, right? So this is very, very powerful. Now, when I take that outside the frame logic and apply it to that video of the dogs with the bowl and the lots of food and the little food, why didn't they smell the lots of food?
Right. That's an excellent question.
Right? I would have thought that they would, because they're putting their noses there, they would have said, wait a minute. But it shows how cueing is so profound that it would override that, unless, of course, the dogs have been trained to do this,
Right.
to make the video. Right. So I'm very curious to know the parameters that went into the making of that video. And because the way I saw it was in one of the fun groups, like, Funny and Ponder or something like that. Right. So they post lots of stuff that's just amusing. And but they get lots of comments on these videos, like hundreds sometimes. It's quite amazing. And most of the people said, oh, my dog would have picked the bowl with the stuff, no problem. Or no, not picked it, sorry. They never said picked it. They said they would have gobbled it once showed. They would have. So they said that takes some training for the dogs not to just scoff the food up, at least by implication, they said this. So I always wonder, though, but still, it made for a funny video. But it's a pity that one doesn't hear the behind the scenes, that you can gauge a little bit more what's going on. It's really profound. But I do feel that it's, for me, as a learning mechanism, in our context here, it's massively valuable to consider the possible options and to extract value without knowing what's being shared, because that's life in general. You don't know. You have to imagine it, and you have to figure it out for yourself. Yes.
Absolutely.
And
Which,
now you've made me very hungry.
oh, that's nice. That
Oh,
actually relates in a way to what I've been going around and around on in my mind this morning.
brilliant. Okay, I'm listening while I make food.
Okay. So this morning while I was getting ready, I was listening to Brene Brown's one of her podcast episodes, and she was talking about. So she was, I think, reading some excerpt from her new book, which is called Atlas of the Heart, and it was
And this is Atlas as in map, not the Greek.
right, Atlas of the Heart, like map of the heart,
Yeah.
and
It makes it a nice title the other way around too.
true. So she said that she was, so I think this episode originally came out on Valentine's Day. So she was doing this excerpt from her book where she's talking about love and lovelessness and trust and all these different things. And so she starts talking about trust, and she's like quoting some different people and what other people have talked about with trust. And I have heard her say several times, she has this big, she's done, she is a researcher, and
Yes, correct. I was just about to comment on that.
yeah,
It's important to keep Renee in context.
right, she is a researcher. Everybody tries to put her in this box of like a self-help person or whatever, and
Correct.
says, no, I am a researcher. I look at data and
Yep.
then I make sense of the data. That is all I'm doing is sharing with you what
She
I
makes
have.
it very clear. Do not take me wrong.
Right. She does. She really tries to clarify, I am not here to tell you what to think. I'm not trying to teach you a philosophy. I'm just passing along information that
I
I
like that about her, by the way.
yeah, that I found in my years of researching. And so, and that was part of what was so interesting about listening to this episode because that put this really interesting spin on what she was discussing. But so she first of all started out talking about, well, no, she was talking about a variety of different things related to love, but she gets to this section where she starts talking about trust. And I've heard her talk about trust before and about um, kind of trying to make sense of trust based on the data that he's gathered from, research, speaking with,
Ah, wow.
understanding, basically kind of following a common framework of what people believe trust to be and what constitutes trust and what breaks trust and all that. And
Yeah.
in listening to, I mean, it's a fascinating discussion, but one of the things that has stood out to me specifically in that discussion, because I am so, I don't know, attuned to discussions about trust, I guess,
Yes.
something that specifically fascinates me about that particular discussion that I've heard her have before around trust is it becomes really apparent to me that all of this stuff is truly based on data that's been gathered from people, right? Like
Yes.
you hear, basically, I guess what it makes me think of is I think data and research becomes this term or become terms that sort of cue or imply, like, because this has gone through a scientific process, it must be correct. And
Yes, that is very important to be very cautious of.
yeah, and that's what's so fascinating to me about the discussions that she's had on trust and about what she has found in terms of what people believe trust to be and how trust seems to work between people is it's like really evident to me that this is data being gathered by human or from humans, human people who are not perfect, who don't have everything figured out, and therefore don't just take just because the general populace of humanity believes trust to be this one thing doesn't mean that it is.
Exactly.
Or all it is, right? It doesn't mean that that's the only thing that trust could be. We still have to go further than
Yes, that right there. I was going to say real quick is the basis underlying the dictionary of power. Carry on.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. So she kind of revisited this whole thing with trust, and that got me, of course, I got me thinking all about trust again and about all of the different things that I've come to be thinking about trust and like hearing her there was some guy, she quoted a different author that she said she read a lot of his work early in her career, and I can't remember exactly the definition, but he defined trust something like when we place the outcome of something that we really want in the hands of another person. It was something like that, basically placing the
Control.
determination of something really important to you in the hands of someone else.
Control. Giving up control.
I, I was going, okay, no, no, not little t trust maybe, but to me, everything that was being said in this section that she was going over was faith, not trust.
Yes.
Like to me, with my new understanding of trust being this mutual commitment to a shared intent, anytime that you're saying, I am entirely placing the outcome, the well being, the whatever of something that's really important to me in another person, that is faith.
Yes.
That's not trust. It's two different things. And it
Yes.
was so fascinating. But where I really got going, lie down, lie down, lie down. Thank you. Was, she was having this whole discussion of trust under the larger umbrella of love. And, love is one of those concepts that I tend to come back to over and over again and feel like I have no, like, I don't even know where to start. Love is just such a complex, big thing to me that's like I don't even know where to start, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface in making sense of love. And she actually said a really similar thing that, I don't think we will probably ever get to a place where we fully understand, encapsulate what love really is. But she said this really interesting thing that I forget who she said was questioning this, but she was reading something from some uh, like research project or something that was done about emotions. And she said there was debate in this particular discussion on whether or not love was or is an emotion. And
Wow.
I was going, ooh, wow, this is really fascinating because I have asked myself the same question and whatever. And she like laughed and she said, all I can say is that in all of the data that we have done over the years and in everything that I've ever read, whenever people are asked to like rate emotions that they feel in terms of strength or like whether or not something is an emotion, love is always the highest rated thing in terms of people feeling strongly that it is an emotion. And so for her, that was like, oh, no, of course it's an emotion because
Yeah.
all of these people that we polled say they feel that it is the strongest emotion they have. And I was like, I don't agree. I don't agree. I think
Wow.
because to me,
Wow. You must have seen that standing alone against the world post.
I guess I didn't, but what was so
Wow.
interesting to me was again that brought into my mind this like major visual of yes, but we are polling people,
Yes.
people who have not, who most likely, I mean, for me, I genuinely think love is a such a Moreness concept that I don't think
Yes.
probably any of us in our human experience will ever fully encapsulate what love really is. And I think that we love, I mean, you have said this so many times that love can be such a dangerous,
Yes.
inappropriate thing when it's separated from appropriateness. And that I think there are numerous related emotions that we attribute to love
Yes.
that are not love. And so we
Uh,
we
yes.
think that
Yes. Yes. Yes.
we think
And
love is
that's where the danger comes in.
not because
Absolutely.
we're not really being clear with ourselves on what it is that we're actually feeling. Is it love that we're feeling or is it compassion? Ooh, what is that? Mashed potatoes?
Potatoes.
Ah, very nice.
While you were talking, oh, I just love this.
But
It's mashed potatoes, but most also. Anyway, carry on. Sorry, I'm just.
love and mashed potatoes. That sounds like a novel or something.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
but I started like really thinking about this of how fascinating would it be to go into all, like map out what are all of the related emotions that when you think, oh, I'm feeling love, like can you delineate, well, what what are the specific
Yes. The components.
emotions, yeah, that I'm feeling? Am I feeling compassion? Am I feeling care? Am I feeling kindness? Like, what are the specific emotions that I'm feeling? And would you categorize love as an emotion. And to me, I don't think so. Personally, I don't think love is an emotion. I think love is something much, much greater than an emotion, and it elicits emotions
Wow.
from us.
Wow. Would you say love is a philosophy?
Well, okay, I agree. Yes, I do think love is a philosophy, but this is where I got into this really interesting thing. So I started thinking about, oh gosh, I wind up here often where I come back to this question of what do I really think love is? How would I define it? What do I think comprises it? Like, do I feel like I even have an inkling of an understanding of what love is? Like capital L, real love. And I started thinking about how love, like one of the things that I love about Brené's work is that she has taken things like vulnerability that typically has had this sort of singular negative association with it and turned it around to show its appropriateness and to show how vulnerability, rather than being a weakness, is actually a strength, and how it has all of these other attributes that we wouldn't typically associate with it. And I was thinking about love and about how, especially from an emotional perspective, I think we tend to think of love as this positive, like always kind, this sweet, warm, whatever thing. And that really, real capital L love often includes really hard things. It's not easy. It's not something that's like flowery and perfect. It requires difficult things. And sometimes, and like, so I was thinking, that's how I got to this point. So I started thinking, is there one thing, can I think of one conception that I would say always goes with love, like an emotion? Is there an emotion or something that I would say is always?
Wow. What a question. What a question, philosopher Erica.
So I
What?
started off with compassion because I thought when I think of love, one of the first things that kind of comes to mind is compassion. And I thought, okay, can I think of any circumstance where compassion would not be loving?
How easily?
So, and I was like, well, not necessarily like just blatantly right off the cuff, but I can absolutely think of times where compassion is not necessarily the appropriate thing. Like it would be a one step logic type of thing. Compassion in the immediate moment might be loving, but in the larger context, if being compassionate in this moment leads to something even worse for the other person or the other thing down the line, is it really the loving thing to do? And so I started thinking about, then that got me thinking about appropriateness. And my brain, like, I'm talking out loud and my brain is just kind of going cranking. I'm working things through. And my brain goes, well, I think capital L love, really like what we're talking about is looking at what's appropriate. And capital L love is like when it's real, true capital L love, it has to be appropriate. And I had this like bing moment of capital L love is synonymous with appropriateness. Capital L love is appropriate.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
Yes. Yes.
that,
Yes.
like,
Yes.
I blew my own mind. That came out of my mouth and I was like, holy shit. This, like, I mean, I have never thought about it in that exact way of love is appropriateness. They are the same thing. That is what love is
Yes.
appropriateness, the ultimate appropriateness. And it made me think about Bina's article that she wrote,
Mm.
because I started thinking, when we take the perspective that you did of assume that the universe is perfect and work backwards from there, make sense.
Yes. Yes.
When you are making sense of the perfection of the world, what you're doing is seeing the exemplification of love. You are
Yes,
seeing
yes, 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 yes,
love
yes,
because
yes, yes,
I mean the entire universe has been crafted from appropriateness, right? From love, from capital L love.
yes,
When we are making sense of things, what we're doing is knowing love, understanding love. We're making sense of love and seeing all of these beautiful examples of what capital L love is. And it made me think about Bina's article at the end when she says, questions and how questions are this gift from the universe. But she
and
says at the very last line, questions are love notes from the universe. And I thought, man, you can take that in a literal sense too, that
yes,
questions are literally love, capital L, love notes.
yes, yeah,
Universe, the
yes.
universe,
And notes as in the music. Yeah.
yeah, and that the universe has been written in love, capital
Yes,
L, love. When we are
yes,
questioning things, when we're
yes,
making sense of things,
yes.
what we're doing is seeing the evidence of love, of appropriateness, of how
Exactly,
this entire experience that we are in,
exactly,
born
exactly,
love, of appropriateness.
exactly. And it's an exquisite
Ooh,
love because it's not a pandering love.
right, right.
That's the important part. That's why I avoid love in
Mm-hmm,
all of it, because the default is to understanding of love is really a pandering love
mm-hmm.
and an indulging love. And it's a weak love. It's a problematic love because it encourages and condones self-indulgence and stuff like that, right? It's a
Well,
commiserative love for the most part.
and I was laughing because, I know we've talked about the fallacy in the whole concept of like, love is the most important thing, or all you need is love, or whatever. And I was laughing because I thought, well, we have talked many times about how if there was one thing that you could start with or have or focus on, it would be appropriateness.
Exactly.
And if appropriateness is synonymous with love,
Yeah.
it's true. All you need is love, but appropriateness, right? If love is appropriateness, that is really all you need. But
It
not
has to be love
little
with
L.
awareness. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, oh my gosh, it's so fascinating. So I've been thinking about this all morning of love from the perspective of appropriateness, and that, anything, if harshness is appropriate, it's love. If
Exactly.
anything
Exactly.
that is appropriate is love,
Yep.
capital L love. That is really what love
Right.
is.
So
And that's
yeah.
just, man, thinking about it from that context has made my brain go in all of these different directions. It's really fascinating.
Where we can see this really, really easily is with snowflake moms, right?
What?
Snowflake moms.
Oh, snowflake mom. Okay.
Um, Snowflakes here being those to whom all you have to have is love, right? This is their core of their philosophy. And they don't want to hurt anybody, they don't want to harm anybody, don't want to make anybody feel awkward or uncomfortable. They take it to the extreme, yes?
Yes.
So you watch them when their kid falls down.
Right.
Oh my God, it's the end of the freaking world. It's like holy moly. But you watch a mom who understands love with awareness. The kid falls down and she just carries on walking. And it's like, and the kid gets up and not a peep, not a thing from the kid.
Right.
But kid who the snowflake mom's kid, oh my God, it's the freaking end of the world. And it's, tears and snot and everything all over the show.
Right.
Same issue. Now, which one is appropriate? Obviously, not to the snowflake mom's love. What are you encouraging in your child? It's a terrible mindset that every time some little thing happens, it's this big deal and you get rewarded for making it a big deal.
Yeah.
Terrible. How is that really love? No, it's horrible. I mean, and that's the sad part.
Right.
They do it out of love, but boy, what a tragedy. Yes.
Right. Well, and that's, I mean, again, to me, that's the real pitfall with, like you were saying, about kind of focusing on like little L love, or what we think little L love is that when you label all of these other emotions, experiences, desires as love, that's where you get that kind of behavior, because you think, well, this is the most loving thing that I can be doing. But what it really is fear, right? It's not love, it's fear, or it's, some weird desire. And I mean, that was one of the things I was thinking about listening to Brene. She talked about, she's talking about all these kind of disparate things that are sort of related to love. And one of them was basically acceptance and like the desire for acceptance. And, that to me is this big, can be a big problematic part of love, is that again,
Like mom.
right, that again goes back to fear, right? It's not that you're actually seeking love. What you're seeking is acceptance out of a fear of being alone, or, whatever. And it's so fat. I mean, I love that idea, and I do really want to do that, of sort of mapping out what are, like, when I catch myself thinking, oh, this is love that I'm feeling, dig deeper and go, what really is at the root of this? Is it really love, or what other emotions can I name, and really get to the bottom of what exactly this is that I'm feeling? Because I think so often what we call love is really some other emotion that we're attributing.
Or a bunch of them, correct.
A bunch of them, yeah. And oh my gosh, that's just so.
Yeah. So the pyramid of love, yes, I am most keen to see, where love is the capstone,
Right, right.
to see that fleshing out of that pyramid. I would love to see that the components of love. Yes, 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 yes. Those snowflake moms are very instructional.
Yes, yes, they are. Yes,
Because again, they don't want to. They are so desperate for approval that they even want it from their little children.
right.
And the idea of the child being disapproving, this is impossible for them.
Yes, absolutely.
They do everything to do this, and of course, they turn the children into monsters. That's the sad part of it. Yeah.
That was one of the interesting things I was thinking about with trust and faith, and that whole thing was, I was thinking about like kids, a lot of times that will come up in discussions of trust, that, children trust their parents implicitly, to take care of them, whatever. And I was thinking, no, that's not trust, because to me, trust inherently um, implies or includes a deliberate choice on behalf of both parties. And for children, like really young children, there is no deliberate choice happening there of them trusting their parents. It's a survival. It's like a biological
Yes. Yeah.
survival
It's
thing, and to the
necessity.
point that I wouldn't really even call it faith either, because I think
Yeah.
faith is also a deliberate choice,
Yeah.
just a different kind. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
biological
Yeah.
survival.
Yeah. 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 Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, for me, the difference between faith and trust is when it comes to acceptance of risk.
Yeah.
Faith
Yeah.
is a belief, a choice to say, I am transferring control and thereby I am going to eliminate risk.
Right. Right. That's true. That's
Wishful thinking, right?
yeah.
This is it. I have faith in God or whatever is going to take care of me. In other words, I have no risk.
And
Trust is
it
risk.
also eliminates responsibility on your part, right?
Exactly.
When you have
Exactly. Where
faith,
trust
yeah, when you have faith in,
typically places all the responsibility on you.
right, you have relinquished all responsibility when it comes to faith. And with
Exactly.
trust,
Exactly. Exactly.
it is
Exactly.
full
Exactly.
commitment, it is mutual responsibility.
And that's why, I don't teach
Right, right,
for that exact reason. No, you need to learn, not me to teach. Yeah. I'll share everything I can, but the onus is on you, because a teacher, you have faith the teacher is going to teach just by the mere words, which
Right.
implies I'm going to learn automatically. So it's a very profound thing. But yes, this abrogation of responsibility, this is a massive deal. It's one of the prime motivations for people.
Yeah.
It's what really affects and influences behavior like crazy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh gosh, my notes are. I may have to close it.
I would even go as far as to say it is, at this point, it is a genetic component.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Because think of all the centuries of the indirect breeding programs that have taken place. If you're a troublemaker, you get killed.
Right. Right.
If you give over your faith into a religion, which is absolutely, this is it. This is what, and you survive because of this. You give over faith, well, the feudal lord is going to take care of it. You survive because
Right.
of this.
Right. That was one of the things I was thinking about, was that faith is not necessarily a bad thing. There are occasions where faith is appropriate and can be good, but the the difficulty, the trap, the problem comes along when we label trust as faith, or faith as trust. When
They are distinctly
what we're
different.
yeah,
Yeah,
when we're really talking about faith, but we're calling it trust, that's when it becomes really problematic. And that
well, little t trust is typically faith, because little t trust is just wishful thinking.
right, right. But and I mean that was one of the things that she was talking about, was that Brene was talking was about trust in relationships and all these things. And I mean, I have come back to that concept so many times that it's no wonder relationships are so screwed up so much of the time, because when you base it on a foundation of trust that is really faith, and that completely removes the other person's freedom of choice, that just doesn't even take it into account, that doesn't make room for growth, for evolution, for change. Of course that's going to, I mean, when your trust, quote unquote trust, in a relationship is based on everything is going to stay exactly the same and you are always going to do what's best for me, or else I won't trust you anymore. That's a real, I mean, you're setting yourself up for failure with that.
Exactly.
I started thinking about, does trust, capital T trust, inherently include, I don't know how to say it exactly, but sort of a like sort of in an equation, does it account for a variable of, I don't know if I want to say time exactly, but like kind of impermanence, that like trust,
Can change over time.
yeah, like we may have a mutual commitment to a shared intent right now,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
we
Yes.
both need to
Yes. The
understand,
caveat of, yeah. Oh, go.
it's like we both need to understand that each of us is an individual, free to and capable of making our own choices, changing, growing, adapting, adjusting. And
Yes.
at any given time, it is possible that we may
Yes.
no longer
Yes.
find that this commitment is appropriate to whatever, I mean, not necessarily to each other,
Yes.
but to
Yes.
whatever intent we
Yes.
have.
Yes.
Our intents,
Yes.
or the expression of our intents, or the focus of our intents may
Yes.
change over
Yes.
time.
Yes.
So
Yes.
trust cannot be this like permanent.
No. 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 All right. So two things that are absolutely critical. Number one, I know when you say capital T trust, it's by now it's automatic that capital T trust is based on a foundation of impeccability.
Right, right,
It cannot exist. This is the major difference, right? Because otherwise you end up with trust being faith.
Right.
Right?
Right.
That's the difference, right? That's when, because with impeccability, you accept responsibility, you accept risk, etc. Right? You are the chief component that makes this work.
Right.
Now, when it comes to what you were saying in the furtherness of this, to me, capital T trust is absolutely also premised on the understanding that it's only as good as it lasts.
Yes. That's
The
yes.
part that you were grasping at, yes? The time component.
Yes.
So, yes, I capital T trust only as good as it lasts, or
Right.
only as long as it lasts,
Right.
right? So
Right.
that's it. Your trust isn't permanent, it's only as long as it lasts.
Absolutely.
Last year implying that, well, it lasts until things change. And
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
everything changes. So trust is a constantly renewing
Yes.
variable,
Yes.
right? Or factor,
Yes. Absolutely.
constantly renewing. I
Yes.
may trust my whole life, but nonetheless, it's constantly renews in
Right.
every single moment and interaction, right? So this is a very important understanding for capital D trust. You know, in your dictionary of power, in the expanded explanations, understandings of the term, to put in there that yes, based on impeccability, but also trust is as good as it lasts, only as long as it lasts, and then also it's constantly renewable
Right.
or constantly renewing. It
Right.
has to, because if you trust without that constant renewal, that becomes blind acceptance. That's blind trust. That's faith. That's not trust anymore.
And it's not impeccable. So the trust.
Exactly, exactly. So trust is also premised on a continuing awareness of what's involved.
Yes.
But
And like a continuous.
I don't really want to be aware of this. I'm handing it over to you. I
Yeah.
don't want to know the details. I don't want the risk. I don't want the stress.
Right.
I'm passing it off. So faith is typically an absolute, unimpeccable choice.
Yes. Yeah.
Very opposite. Yes. Yeah. I mean, really, faith is essentially you are saying, I will be obedient to what I've given my faith to.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
faith is a very clever way of saying be obedient.
Yeah. Absolutely.
What's a manipulation? What's a manipulation?
Absolutely.
When we start to understand things from, this sort of feudal culture, it changes everything. Yes.
Absolutely. 100%.
What's
Absolutely.
a, what a phenomenal insight. What I really like is, and I'm thrilled about, is your synonym for appropriateness, which is love.
Yeah.
Capital L love, not just any old love.
I don't know why. I mean, that's one of the most, we talk about this all the time. I know I say this all the time, but one of the most fascinating things to me about making sense of things and thinking things through is that most of the time for me, I am not coming to some grand conclusion that I have never
Yes,
danced
yes,
around or thought about
yes,
in a different way before. It's just that when you put the pieces together in a certain way, it's perspective, right? It's just looking at it from a
yes,
slightly adjusted perspective. It everything just goes boom and like snaps.
yes,
It's
yes,
amazing
yes, yes,
how this
yes,
simple
yes.
adjustment can make a world of difference. It's
Yes,
so
yes, 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 yes. Why? Capital C connectivity. That's why.
yeah, I love it.
Because when you do that, the thing, and you start to connect. And when all those nodes, which is the PowerPoint, the power conception nodes, right, in your brain, they light up. Now you light, you've already lit them up, but now when you connect them, yes, you now connect what's around them, and you start to light up the greater, bigger picture. And we get closer and closer to enlightenment.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
So this is a big, 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 big deal.
One of
Very
the
big.
things that I thought about when I was thinking about the love synonymous with appropriateness thing was it reminded me. I think this is in The Alchemist. I think. I don't know. But I remember hearing something, I believe it was from The Alchemist, where it talks about the transmutational power of love and about how love is this force that, like, kind of the ultimate transmuting force that
Interesting. Yeah.
elevates things. And it was so interesting thinking about that now from the perspective, from the lens of appropriateness, because that makes it make so much more sense to me. Because to me, saying love is this ultimate transmutational force is very abstract, and it's hard for me to like really conceptualize that in a concrete example sort of way. But thinking of appropriateness as the ultimate transmutational force makes
Yes.
total sense to me, because if you
Yes.
look at any
Yes.
concept,
Yes.
anything, any exemplification of some certain concept, if it's separated from appropriateness, it's basically, I mean, really, it is like an entirely different thing.
Yes. Erica, yes, yes, yes. Oh, you make my heart sing, Erica. You make my heart sing.
I mean,
Yes, yes.
anything like trust, all of the things we've been talking about, trust, love, all of these things, when they are not associated with appropriateness, their examples, the exemplification of those things are entirely, completely different
Yes.
than when they are attached to appropriateness.
Yes.
When they are
Yes.
made appropriate, they literally transform into something completely different, even though it's the
Correct.
same
Correct.
concept.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
And
Correct. Exactly.
so much sense.
Exactly.
Love as synonymous with appropriate, ultimate transmutational force.
Yes.
Totally.
Yes. Yes. That is the magic, is this understanding of appropriateness. It is why it is the one concept
Mm-hmm.
that binds them all, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's so fantastic how appropriate that is, right? In well, I don't know how to call it. Used the quote from the Lord of the Rings quote, right? Uh, and I'm trying to find it here so I can read it to you. I know I have it right here. Uh, oh. One concept to rule them all, one concept to find them, one
Oh,
concept bring them all,
yes.
and in the unawareness bind them.
Ooh, I like it.
Yes, because it's one ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them.
Yeah.
Right, but this is now it's part of the new nobility myths. Of course, it's long past, and so things get changed, right? But I love that, one concept to bring them all, and in the unawareness bind them.
Yeah.
Appropriateness allows us to bind and find and rule and bring, because appropriateness cannot be appropriate without the appropriate understanding of context.
Yeah.
This is it. Remember, I told you when the concept of context came into my world, it was like a spiritual event. It was a happening. It was almost a visual. It was this kind of it was a big deal. Understanding context, and without understanding context, we cannot understand appropriateness.
Yeah.
And context makes all of the difference in everything. The moment you see things apply in one context but not in another, that ability to see multiple perspectives, which is the ability to perceive different contexts, this is incredible. This is incredible difference. And of course, then also the other component, which is absolutely essential to life. To understand appropriateness, we have to also understand and know motivation.
Yes.
Depending on the motivation, the appropriateness changes. Understand motivation, understand humans, or
Yes.
anything really, right? Or you could just say, understand motivation, understand.
True. Yeah.
Good, So, so appropriateness has those two. Now, you can understand motivation, but without understanding context, you're going to struggle.
True.
Right? I mean, look at a baby. It understands its motivation, but it has no conception of context. So it just, does the same thing and it doesn't work. Okay.
Right.
Doesn't. So this is massive, massive. And of course, one of the first lessons for a baby is when crying stops, as it becomes a toddler, and complaining as a means, right? Your motivation, you complain. That's it. When you start to realize this doesn't work, it's when context starts to come into it. Right? This is the parent automatically, oh, no longer appropriate. You've grown up now. Oh, different context, in other words, right?
Yeah.
It's implied. It's not said specifically, but yeah. So, isn't that one of our first major lessons of appropriateness, but without it being named? It's
Absolutely.
no longer appropriate for you to cry as a baby. That's why everybody knows appropriateness, but the word is not used, which is so fascinating as a philosophical concept. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's so fascinating. It's so fascinating to me. Yeah. Yeah.
It's making me think of appropriateness, and I would also include impeccability, I think. But appropriateness and impeccability are what transform little letter concepts into
Exactly.
capital concepts.
Exactly. 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 Absolutely. Yes.
Little T trust to big T trust, little I
Exactly.
to big I intent. It is
Exactly.
appropriateness and impeccability that do.
Exactly. And appropriateness and impeccability are really synonyms.
Yeah, yeah,
Right? I said, appropriateness is really interesting because there aren't really synonyms for it. I mean, you look in the dictionary, it won't give you, but impeccability is. So is awareness.
yeah,
So is attunement. So is capital L love.
yeah.
You could even take trust and make it into a synonym for appropriateness.
Right.
In the end, right, when we really take every single concept in the dictionary of power to its absolute maximum end, and in all contexts, we start to see that they're all synonyms.
Yeah.
This I love. This I absolutely love. But you can't just say that and accept it. You have to get there by yourself, right?
Yes.
So I may have said this, and I'm pretty sure I have said this to you before at some point, but it didn't matter. You now taking trust to this end through faith. I'm sorry, capital L love, and seeing it's a synonym. It's like, wow, 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 wow. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. Because like I said, we see that connectivity, right?
Right. Well, and I think to the point you were making earlier of not, your deliberate decision to not focus on love and to focus on these other concepts, part of, to me, why that is such a powerful thing is because when you build a foundation of understanding of these other concepts, then when you come to the point of, oh, wait, love is this, then you have all of these pieces that then fit into place
Yes, 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 Erica. Yes.
to love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It will this capital U understanding will lead you to it. Yes. Awareness, discernment, and understanding. ADU, absolutely. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So key. So key. The application of those three.
Yeah.
It's not just having those three, but it's the application of them. It's the application that's key. But
Yeah.
yes, it's so huge. It's so huge. So huge. Yes. 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 Yes.
Yeah.
Again, so good.
I meant to tell you, I was going to send the lecture to you, and then I got distracted when we had this weekend, I was down in the city with mom doing her birthday celebration.
Cool.
There was all kinds of, I didn't do any art. Like it was a very different weekend, but
Good, 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 good.
it was fun. Yeah, it was really fun. But I came across this really interesting lecture by this person I had never heard of before that goes into, it's really interesting. I've only got about halfway, but it's called something about the magical Negro. And
Wow.
this is the guy who gives the lecture is a black man, and he has for his whole life been this really big Stephen King fan. I have never read any of Stephen King's books. I've seen movies and things. I've never read the books, but
Gunslinger. That's all I gotta say.
okay. So he has read, he said like he grew up reading his books and all this stuff. And he said, I think he said when, I'm pretty sure he said it was The Green Mile. When The Green Mile came out, he was reading this story, and like there were a lot of things that just were not sitting well with him. And it really made him start like paying attention to the way that Stephen King writes Black characters.
Mm,
Then, over time, as Stephen King wrote more and more and more books that included more Black characters, this like trope started to become evident
yeah.
where he used Black people as a writing tool.
Yes.
That this guy, I don't think he coined this term. I think he shared who coined the term. I can't remember who it was, but this concept of the magical Negro, where this
Yeah.
is used
Yeah.
as a tool
Yeah.
to like further the story, but he talks about how detrimental
Yeah.
it is in terms of
Absolutely.
Stephen King being this incredibly popular author, and
Yeah.
when that's like the culturally pervasive
Yeah.
visual of what people are getting as what Black people are, that it becomes a problem. And so he goes into this, like he really digs into all of this really interesting stuff about like
Yeah.
nuance about Stephen King's writing. But he said this really fascinating thing. So he pulled a transcript of an interview that Stephen King did with Playboy in like 1983, I think.
Oh,
And
wow.
he said at the time Stephen King only had like 10 books out or something.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the Playboy person that was interviewing him said, well, I want to read you this critique that this person has left of your writing, and I want to see if you think this is a fair critique. And it was from a woman, and she basically said, I don't understand why Stephen King is incapable of writing a believable, real woman character. All of the female characters that are in his books so far are either the, like sniveling victim,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
the bitch goddess who's like trying to take over the world. She's super evil and horrible.
Yeah. 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 Extremes. Yeah.
And he said, I think this is a totally spot on critique of me.
Good for him.
It was interesting. Yeah, he said, I think that's totally true. I absolutely agree that that's how I write women. And he said, I think that I get past it and I'm at this point where I can write this really well-rounded character. And then I write somebody like Carrie, who starts out as a victim and then moves into a bitch goddess and, just goes. And then he voluntarily, without being asked, said, I also think that this critique applies to my writing of Black characters as well.
Wow.
I just have not given them depth and all this stuff.
Right.
But where he trips up was, and this was the thing that
He got himself into trouble.
this is where the lecturer was saying, he said, he basically ended it with, at this point, I know that this is a problem, but I don't have a good answer or a good fix for it. And the lecturer was saying, the really interesting thing is, he said that back in 1983. He wrote hundreds of novels after that and has yet to write a well-rounded, non-magical Negro character. So clearly he has not really like done anything to work toward fixing it. And the reason I mentioned the story and the thing that brought this around for me was the lecturer said, he falls into the trap that is common with a lot of sort of unaware white people or like well-meaning white people in thinking that knowing is the same thing as doing.
Yes.
And I was like, boom,
yes.
without
Yes.
education, it's all meaningless, right? That is
exactly. And also the memory trap, right?
yes, yeah.
Very cool. Talking about thinking things through. The very term Black as used in America is a complete muddle oxymoron mess. For instance, coming from South Africa, I don't deign to speak for Africa as a whole, but it's certainly, from my understanding, it's pervasive in the continent, sub-Saharan continent, right? Africa isn't all black. People forget that Arabs are Africans, but this doesn't apply. So this concept, like if you go in South Africa and blacks come on TV, Americans, and they say, oh, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of a joke.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
Because, well, first of all, you have to call yourself African American, you've got no connectivity to Africa whatsoever, right? So, again, if for instance, the American basketball team comes, yeah, they don't see them as Shaquille O'Neal. They don't see him as black. They see him as American.
Right.
That's it. China, same thing. The Chinese don't see him as black, they see him as American. You are more American than you are black by a long shot. Right. What differentiates you from a light complexioned American is what? What's the difference? It doesn't exist from an external point of view. But this is the problem, that the black culture, the black society, because it was a culture that, a group that was so suppressed, they thought mistakenly the way out was to establish an identity.
Interesting.
To establish a power identity. Yes, one that would in the hierarchy concept get them respect, which they did. They created the whole hoodlum culture, which completely backfires against them, which is why, black criminals are treated in a whole different way. It's in the psyche of Americans that blacks are tough and strong and all this, right? You've created a falseness. But if they had instead insisted on being treated as Americans, that would have been the way out, because black inherently is a racist concept. You are looking to fight racism by creating your own entrenched racism. What is the difference between me and Shaquille O'Neal other than his skin color? If you insist, oh, but he's black, well, isn't that based on a racial artificial criteria? Yes, it is, totally. It's BS, right? Okay, I understand you have some genetics involved if you're Native American and say, yes, yeah, okay. But again, too, if you don't insist that I can become Native American by, I love your culture, I speak your language, I adopt your customs. If this is not possible to become Native American, then again, your entire concept is based on a racial criteria, which is bullshit.
And that is, I have seen actually a lot of people, it's so interesting. The whole Native American, especially, I think, right now has become this major exemplification of, anybody who wears, any person who does not have Native American blood, any Native American related thing, this is like cultural appropriation, is totally unacceptable.
Yeah.
I have seen multiple other cultures, especially like Latin American, Mexico, like anything in sort of Central America, and South America as well. People of that background saying, I think I've seen posts of people doing like cultural dances, getting tattoos of different, cultural things. And people who are of that culture will comment and say, we love when people,
of course,
people are really into this, like anybody and everybody's welcome, do it, please, because then that means that you're learning about our culture, you're interested in our culture.
That's very interesting that it would come from the South American context, because the countries there are amalgams. To be Brazilian is it's not an ethnic thing.
Right. It's a cultural thing.
Same as American, right? But it's certainly a mixed culture, of all different varieties. And, European, African, and the Native Americans. And that's, all those countries are like that. They all mix together. So they cannot object to it.
Right.
Because it's what they built off. But like the Native Americans in America who object to this are absolutely foolish. You are going to crush the very thing that makes you valuable. But this whole concept though of understanding racism, and to say that if it's based on a genetic component, it's racist. For instance, if I go to Japan and become Japanese,
Right.
I'm not racially Japanese,
Right.
but over time, okay, Japan has been very close to it, so there's not much mixture there. But over time, my children will, and that's it. So when we understand that, culture and it needs to be open and not based on racial criteria, it's the only way out of this. If you're going to insist that it's a racial issue, then you are just perpetuating racism. And they don't get it. And now, when we see it with the Native Americans, it's very easy to make this argument. Or it's even a better argument with the Japanese, because they were very close to outsiders for the longest time, right? And even today, it's probably more difficult to become Japanese than it is to be, join other countries nationally, right? To immigrate and all that. But it makes the very clear point that this has to be open.
Right.
I have known people. Two guys I can think of in particular used to come into the store. They were more Japanese than any other Japanese I've ever met. They knew everything about Japanese history and the culture. They were into the samurai stuff, of course. That's why I knew them from the stores. But man, they were just, they knew that stuff inside and out. It was amazing. It's like they had been Japanese and were just now born into this.
Yeah.
So how do you not say to a person like that, no, we'd love you to come and be part of Japan? Because they are so much more connected than the typical Japanese, because to them it's like a big deal. It's like the ordinary person in any culture. They don't care about the history and the customs and all this stuff.
Right.
They couldn't get two hoots. These guys are keeping it alive, but they aren't racially Japanese. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. Again, too, any culture that absolutely worships tradition is doomed to die.
Yeah, it's true.
That's it. You're doomed to die if you worship an unchanging tradition. Because there's no evolution. I mean, how do you possibly do this? People get so enamored with their traditions that they stop changing and growing.
Yep.
And that's a tragedy right there. That's a tragedy. I used to see this arrogance with people coming to the Bushman, and they'd see them wearing shoes.
Right.
Oh, it's so sad, losing their customs and their traditions. Say, you fucking idiot. You walk in the bush without shoes on and you see how you like it. Yeah. Yes, you can do it, but shoes is a major improvement. Now, they must suffer because of what? To keep you and your ideas happy? Come on, you want to just smack these people for their arrogance.
Well, and I remember my mom making this big point about that with my grandma. She would talk about how, like, my grandma would have these, not exactly traditions, but sort of ideas of like, oh, things were so much better back when and whatever. And she said, but does she still wash her dishes by hand? Does she still live in a house with no air conditioning? No, there are
Exactly. So this idea, it's little r romanticism.
Yeah.
And we have to, it's really interesting. This capital R romanticism is a major influence in the course that Bina is doing and I'm doing with her.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
The presenter of it actually mentions it specifically, and he talks about it, and it's very clear. Now, capital R romanticism is, of course, a major part of art psychology, right? The art world and the art psyche, the art mentality, the art understanding. I mean, to be an artist essentially is you are romanticizing the world. You may have no idea of the romantics back in the early 1800s, but nonetheless, you're still subscribing to that psychology. Snowflakes take that to the extreme. Yeah. They romanticize love to the extent of it being completely unrealistic because they don't want to deal with the awful truths of life, right? So they use, instead of art, they use love as the mechanism. They over-romanticize love, and it becomes the be-all and end-all, and it's the way out of everything. Yeah. But boy, what a genius excuse that again, that snowflake mom who's attending to the child like that, right? She knows her weakness, essentially. Yeah, she knows that she doesn't want to, that she's desperate for approval, for attention, for acceptance, right? And she knows she doesn't have the strength of character to stand up and say whatever and incur displeasure or whatever, even from her children. So instead of, in the past, before love caught on, people clicked, wait a second, I've got an out. Before that, they would just, and kind of cringe and be awkward and not know what to do, right? But then I said, wow, I've got a way out. I can just act out of love. And who can contradict me? So I'm doing it out of love. Who can naysay love as a motivation?
Right.
It's impossible, really, or it's very difficult. Yes, we can because we have the tools of discernment to do so, but the average person not. So you're screwed. It's a way to combat the hierarchy and the bullying. Yeah, but I'm doing it out of love. What do you say now?
And that goes back to what you were talking about last week of the golden rule. To me, that brings up the golden rule in my mind of when we
Yeah,
take do unto others as you would have them do unto you and call that love.
exactly. That's a narcissist heaven right there.
And I mean, I think that's, you know, that is something I've thought about a lot with
Yeah,
generational.
yeah.
I hesitate to call it like generational trauma exactly, but I guess generational sort of patterns
Yes,
behavior
yes.
that
Cycle.
that so often what you see is a parent who does something out of love, right, that causes some problem for the child. The child then deems, I will never do this with my child, right? Oh, this was this horrible experience for me. Therefore, I will treat the child the way I wanted to be treated when I was a kid. And that ends up causing a problem for the child
Yes.
because that's not what was appropriate for them. So then they say, I will never, and you just get into this cycle of
Yeah,
parents out of love, I mean, out of good intent,
yeah.
treating their children in a way that they wanted to be treated rather than what is really appropriate for the individual.
Exactly. 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 If you look at those snowflake moms or dads, the whole snowflake logic, right? You see it as covert BMNism.
Interesting.
Right. It's very, very sneaky. They don't want to directly confront and say they say and be seen as bullies, but they find a way to put one over you and kind of screw you and shut you up and say, look how special I am, but in a way without being obvious about it. It is really, really sneaky, covert hierarchy.
Yeah.
It's fantastic to watch. It's fantastic to watch. But when you see those people and you peel away the layers, you catch them in an unguarded moment. You see the nastiness that can come out of those people.
Yes. Yeah, it's true.
So, one has to be not fooled by that and see it for what it is, as covert hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very clever, though. It's like you've been calling me weak, but now I've transferred my weakness into a strength by calling it love.
Yeah.
Yeah. But really, it's still the same thing. Of course, underneath, you're still crappy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like all BMNs, they're all insecure at the root. It's the same problem. They're looking to be tough to cover the insecurity. It's
Right.
fantastic, to be hierarchical is to cover the insecurity. Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh,
Understanding that psychology is so huge. It's so huge. It's so huge. It changes everything, right?
yeah, it
Really,
does.
it's quite profound.
It
It's
does.
quite profound.
It's true.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm seeing something that's after this here. I'll show you. Just caught my eye while sitting here now. Where's screen share? I was thinking of it in connection to your talk about trust, right? So here's the thing. So the next one is the real magic of anomalies lies in the resolution of doubt.
Interesting. The real magic of anomalies lies in the resolution of doubt.
Can
Hmm.
you read? Is it big enough to read?
Yeah. Okay. I'm just thinking about that first statement. That's interesting.
Yes.
Real
Yes.
of anomalies lies in the resolution of doubt. The memory of the magic is a temporary joy, even though it lasts a long time and never fully goes away. But the resolution of doubt, that lasts a lifetime. It forever locks us into knowing the decision resulting from the anomaly is unquestionable. Those decisions become anchor points of power, the cornerstones and foundations for a life that builds. A life that builds on magical decisions which are inviolate. Magical decisions we know are long-term overview decisions. Decisions appropriate in the overall context. This is a phenomenal gift. The phenomenal gift of anomalies. Ooh, that's a fun thing to say. The phenomenal gift of anomalies. That's a tongue twister. The phenomenal
Phenomenal gift.
the
Yeah.
gift of connection to the universal supercomputer, the gift of access. Interesting.
Yes, yes. Now it's meant to be. It's not a complete quote, obviously, because it's not giving the underlying elucidation of how come this is so. Yes, but it's now obviously the chapter hopefully will give some understanding of that.
Yeah.
Um, now, in our context here of the trust, is that when we get an anomaly and we are trusting it to be a communication from the universe, our higher self, our soul, our deeper self. By implication, this is an input I can capital T trust.
Interesting.
Which means that right there, if I'm using this as my criteria for my decision, that just goes out the window.
Right.
Because if any decision I make based on my personal knowledge and knowing, I know it's compromised because I know I don't know everything. Right.
Right.
So yes, it may be, but I cannot think that it is. Whereas if I'm using this universal input, I can take the doubt right out of it. Yes,
Yeah.
of course, things change over time, but I have that confidence that this is the appropriate decision to make now. Yeah. Not a big deal?
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept. Really, really interesting.
I just wanted to put a quote while I was about it there about trust, and as long as it lasts. Trust is always only as long as it lasts.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Right. And I was going to say as is only as good as it lasts, but I wanted to put it the time, because yes, everything is only as good as it lasts, right? That's with understanding. But I thought with trust, though, to make it more time, right? It's only as long as it lasts. Trust
Yes.
is always only as long as it lasts. By implication, it's a variable, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean that concept. We've talked about that before, not in that exact term, but I remember one of the big key things for me in my initial delving into trust was recognizing that it is appropriate to reevaluate that choice, over time.
Yeah.
And that, that now, that because that was something that I thought about and sort of came to a long time ago, I don't even it just fits perfectly and I don't even give it a second thought. But to think about it from the perspective of what people typically label trust as when it's actually faith, that is a radical view of trust to say
Yes.
a
Yeah.
key inherent component of trust is that it's only good
Yeah.
for as long as it lasts. I mean, to most people, I think that would be like an oxymoronic statement of trust, just based on
Yeah.
this idea that trust is really blind faith that should never that has no end point. I mean, that is a really radical view of trust to say that trust is inherently impermanent.
Yes.
It is inherently changing. It's
Yes.
constantly changing. You have to make room for
Yes.
adjustment, for appropriateness, for growth, for
Yes.
adaptation. I mean, that's a really radical way of looking at trust
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
comparison to the way most of us used to look at trust.
Yeah. Yeah. So I added the sort of all of these corollaries. My tongue always sticks on that. Right? Trust is always only as long as it lasts. Trust is an ever renewing variable. Choice demands update.
Love that. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And I like this from Bina's quote from her article. When
Oh my,
we pay attention, it's a connection.
I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Did I put in here questions or love notes from the universe? I don't think
I
so.
love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's so magical that you put that there. It was a very, very cool thing. Yeah. Bina said she feels that she's updated now. She used to think of herself in her self-conception as a power learner. Right? She says, "Oh, you know what? I feel now I can say I'm a power discerner."
Oh, I like it. I like it.
Yeah. Yes.
By the way, that quote which you just put in, it said question. It was missing an
Oh
S.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Questions plural. Yeah. 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 Because Bean and I we're still ongoing, but we've been practicing or enjoying doing applying capital R reading.
Yeah.
As an ongoing thing. Everything gets applied capital R reading, and this has been major for Bina, in shifting her from being a power learner to a power discerner.
Right.
Because when you do that capital R reading and you do it so regularly, your brain starts to retrain itself to see implication, to see nuance, to see depth, to see sophistication. You can't help it but discern after a while. It's very cool. It's very cool. It's very, very cool. And it really, really blows our minds when we realize how much we just accept without question.
Yes.
Yeah. So, like in my quote there, yes, in the quote about the anomalies, the very first line of that quote is asking you to just accept and believe.
Right.
Now, all right, it's a quote, and then there is obviously more to the quote that hopefully is going to give a backup and a proof for this. It isn't forthcoming in the quote, but because it's a quote that starts a chapter, by implication, you are going to get this in the chapter. Yeah. So I really hope so. If not, then well, I'm going to adjust the Biala story a little bit
Right.
to bring the gods into it a little bit more, where they comment on things to say, well, you know what, that quote, they never really supplied the justification here. I didn't get it from the story, did you? And so then, if there's any lingering questions, I'll resolve them. But
That's something that I have been appreciating more recently, that I know. I mean, I was saying to the girl that cuts my hair the other day after our session on Tuesday,
the same one all the time. What's her name?
Courtney.
Courtney. There you go.
I
Okay.
was telling her that I was sharing with her the story that I told you about Jason Reynolds, the children's author, who
Yeah.
was the story about the fish, and how I had a related experience and had a completely different takeaway from it, and that was a really good reminder to me of just how much I developed this sense of obedience as being equal to goodness.
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm really appreciating in myself the fact that, like with the stuff I was listening to with Brene, I'm recognizing that that is changing in me. I think it is a difficult thing for me to change. It's such an embedded notion that got put in there when I was a kid that you don't question, just do what you're told, be obedient, whatever. That it is a really pervasive thing to overcome. It's something that is a big challenge for me, but I am seeing progress. I am recognizing that I'm not always taking things at face value, that I'm hearing
Yeah,
things, reading
yeah,
things, taking input in,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
going, is that what I
yeah,
have experienced? Is that, if I think this through, do I come to the same conclusion?
yeah, yeah.
What
Oh, you are doing that. You are, you are, you are,
I
you
am,
are.
and it's exciting that I'm seeing real evidence of that changing in my habits.
Yes, yes. And it's a powerful, powerful, powerful habit. You know, we start to unhook from the wheel of convention.
Right.
And that the wicked wheel, I called it in that poem I wrote it. It's so massive. It's waiting for spring. This was the challenge that Bina said, write it. And I really thought how just the very words waiting for spring are problematic. It means you're not enjoying winter
Right. Right.
by implication.
Uh,
And this is it. And this is such a default for a lot of people that they
yeah,
don't even realize what they're doing.
it's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Actually, I was thinking about that the other day in Caverns podcast, the guy who does the relaxing voice podcast. Um, Caverns said something about, what was he? Oh, he was talking about the weather in Scotland. He goes to Scotland fairly frequently, and he was talking about how it rains. He was reading Scottish, and there's some word in Gaelic that means the like dreary, wet, kind of weather.
Right, 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 right.
And he said, but the interesting thing was that in the Gaelic term, there it was, even though it's describing this dreary kind of blah weather, there is a note of endearment in it. And
Interesting. Yes.
he said one of the biggest things that has like helped me just in life in general has been coming to a place of not only acceptance but enjoyment in rain.
Yes.
And he
Yes.
said, I realized that I was spending so much time being like sad that it was raining or upset that it was raining. And he said, when you can reach a point where you enjoy the rain in the same way that or to the same level that you enjoy sunny days,
Yeah.
you have such a better experience, right? It's only harming yourself to
Yeah.
have this association with, oh, it's raining, that means,
Yeah. Yeah.
bad,
Yeah.
horrible, whatever. And I think that's so true,
It's huge.
especially like
Huge.
my mom and I both are that way with, it's so easy to be happy and in a good
Yeah.
mood
Yeah.
and whatever when it's sunny and beautiful,
Yeah.
but it's so tempting to just go to have your mood
Yes. 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 To fall into the habit of conventionality. Yes.
cold, ick, oh, it's raining, I'm going to be in a bad mood or I can't get these things.
Exactly. We've got rain here now, so I'm assuming you're going to get rain soon if you don't already have it.
It's been raining and it's
Oh, good. Okay, so here's something that I would absolutely suggest. Now, I'm not very much given to tips, but this is a major tip. So the next time it rains, right? And now this is especially useful if you get a nice heavy downpour and there's been a while without rain. tune into how the earth is feeling.
Okay, I was just talking about this because in the latest episode of Cavern's podcast, one of the words that somebody gave him to talk about was petrichor, which
Yes.
is the
Yes.
smell
The
of
smell. Right.
earth right after it rains and everything.
Yeah.
And I started there that started this big discussion where everybody was talking about that, and it was so funny because he said the word which I had never heard before, and he said, "This is my favorite smell," and I was like, "Oh, it's gonna be rain. It's got to be rain. Like that is my absolute favorite smell is the smell of rain. Well, one of my favorite smells is the smell of rain on hot concrete in the summer.
On concrete.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's such a fascinating phenomena, but like in the summer when the concrete or the pavement, really in like asphalt,
I know
whatever,
what you mean. Yeah.
when it's especially on the odd days where it's kind of like it's been sunny and then it starts to get rainy and the asphalt or the
Yes.
concrete is like really
Yes.
warm and then the rain first
Yes. And you get the steam, but yeah.
comes up, and I wrote that in the comments. I was like, that is this like core memory that I have when I was little of if you were lucky enough to catch when the rain would first start on a warm day, you'd see, it only
I can
lasts
smell it right now. I can smell it right now.
for a little while, right? The steam only lasts for a little while, but it comes up and you just there's just this smell and it's just like the most intoxicating, amazing thing.
Yes.
And so he was talking about petrichor and how apparently that is related, or it is technically considered petrichor, but that
Yes.
petrichor has
Yes.
earth, and like the mic that it's that smell is caused by these like
Yes.
oil that's secreted from plants when they've been parched, and then it like does.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking about that okay,
Well, a
I
lot of it is just you smelling the dust in the air and the release of nitrogen as well.
but I said somebody so one of the people in this group commented and said, I really like the origin of the word, which comes from the Greek petra, rock, and then ichor, which meant the golden fluid flowing
Oh,
in the veins of the gods.
yeah.
I said that conjures this really interesting image to me of what petrichor
Yes.
is from
Yes.
sort of symbolic perspective.
Yes.
I
Yes.
I called it the spark of life. That it's like
Yes.
it is
Yes.
the possibility of creation that comes from
Yes.
the meaning of
Yes.
this
Yes.
life-giving fluid, the like immortal life-giving fluid
Yes. Yes.
and the
Yes.
parched earth, and that this really interesting, cool thing is happening, and in the joining of those two, there's this.
Yes.
I mean, it's just I don't know. I think that's so
Yes.
fast.
Now, for me to get poetic here, yeah, uh, to get poetic, it is communion with the gods or with earth,
Yeah.
because petrichor gives us the opportunity to actually ingest the earth. A typical smell, the molecules aren't, they're not at that level of strength where they become ingestible, right? But petrichor is so, right? So you can taste it as well. It's enough to taste. So when you breathe it in, you're now taking this into your being, like certain smoke mixtures. They get into a fine powder and you ingest, psychedelics now, you ingest the thing via the smoke, the particulates coming into you. So you absorb them. And this, I feel, is the echo of the earth
Yeah.
that we are ingesting and thereby communing. So we get contact with the earth directly in a way that we cannot otherwise get from the inside, right? I mean, I can touch and feel the earth, but it's not inside me.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if I swallow it, same thing. It's not really inside me. And also it's not, if I take earth, it's not the substance, the essence of earth. The petrichor seems to release that essence. Now, when I say, when it rains like that, if you feel the earth and you go deep, you feel that joy of the earth, of getting its nourishment, getting the rightness of what it needs. Sunshine, it gets all the time. It's like, okay, yes, sunshine gives me joy too, and it's necessary. But without the water, the sunshine becomes a bane, right?
Yeah.
So the water is what gives it the balance, so the water is the key part. Yeah. Too much sunshine happens all the time. Too much water, rarely.
Right. Right.
And even if it is too much, it's just temporary. And even if it is permanent, then it just becomes a lake or a sea,
Right.
and it's still life. So, too much water, not a problem. Too much sunshine, absolutely. Yeah. I think I mentioned this before, though, right? That, people worship the sun, but it's not the sun that you need to worship, it's the atmosphere.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Otherwise, would be mutants and pride and all this. Just a little bit of, one of those discernment jokes, right? Yeah, I like that. It's just to see, hey, don't take things so always for granted.
Yes, it's true.
By the way, I saw this as one of the theories against the moon landing. They said that in the Van Allen belts, the radiation is so huge that there's no way to get through it. The shielding on the spaceships wouldn't protect the astronauts. Now, that was the claim at the time. I didn't, research it into validating it, because I still didn't think that. I didn't think their claim was accurate, but that was one of the proofs, so to speak, for why they couldn't have had a moon landing. So, yeah. Now, obviously, it's not as much as what they would have thought or not. But, I like this idea, though, of looking at conspiracies as if they were true. I find it's a very useful exercise because, in the same way, that's what I essentially did with making sense of the world. Yeah. I mean, I created a conspiracy theory. Oh, it all makes sense.
Right.
What's the difference? And then I went and see if it stood up. Right. That came about really the longer backstory. I think I may have shared with you, but it was on the quest for perfection.
Okay.
Right. To me, that day the light bulb burst, right? And my mother said, "Oh, it can't all be perfect." And it's like, well, why not? And I realized it was a rhetorical question from her, or statement. Didn't, at least my question was rhetorical to her. I knew she wouldn't see this as a realistic conception of why not. So then, of course, I thought about what perfection is, and that very first act of philosophizing in a very specific, deliberate way, as a consequence of thinking it through to the end, where perfection is a variable essentially, and it's constantly updating, and it's what we want that's realistically attainable, and not only realistically attainable, but even should we have it with the power to change, we still wouldn't. Now, that doesn't mean what we want can only be acquired with having extra power. No. I might be able to achieve something that I don't need the power for, but now if I have the power to change anything at all, I'm saying, no, I don't want to change what I have. It's perfect for me. Yes. Right. So perfection became this attainable ideal, at least my personal perfection. Yes.
Right.
And so I said, I'm setting off on this path, and that's what I called it, the path to perfection. That's what I considered myself to be on all through my school years. And probably after that too. At some point it changed simply because of moreness, appropriateness, etc. coming into it. Anyway, so on this path to perfection, at some point I said, I am pursuing an idea which I don't know what it is.
Right.
And part of this is looking to see how to make the world around me, at least my world, into what I see as perfect.
Right.
And of course, there's a lot involved in that, and it's a very complex, ever-changing thing. So the idea said to me, reverse engineering. Okay, what if I assume it's already perfect and see if this will work for me? And that's where it all. Just that. So it was the pursuit of personal perfection. It led me to that simply as a shortcut mechanism, as an energy saving mechanism, really. And then I realized, wow, okay, I don't actually have to make any work to get to perfection. I already have it. In other words, I don't need to change everything else. I have to change my perception and my perspective. That's all. That's all, really. And that was a huge transformation. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a
Massive, 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 massive shift. Just, again, impeccability, best use of energy. Yeah. Yeah. Attune yourself to the already existing perfection rather than trying to create it. Much simpler.
Ooh,
Much simpler. Attune yourself to the already existing perfection. Yes. I'm going to write that down.
rather than trying to create it. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
oh,
Exactly.
I love that.
Exactly. Well, since you've already typed it, put it in chat for me, please. Save me typing. You do it so much better. Yeah. It's funny, when I was at school, to take typing was, really not an option for me.
Interesting.
They did have it, but it wasn't an option because of, well, you know, a student that was for, like, essentially. I mean, I'm struggling to say it because it's so horrible, to say that. But it was, well, if you didn't have any brains, you do typing.
Oh, okay.
It's terrible, terrible. I mean, now it would have been very useful, but back then, of course, there weren't any keyboards. It was manual typewriters, and you are essentially, pigeonholing yourself to be a secretary or a underling of some kind, So, you know, I don't think I would have been allowed to take typing even right now, really. I mean, I probably could have insisted on, but I would have had so much pressure against it. I saw no value in it then, unfortunately, but boy, I would have loved to do this. And so it would save me a lot, especially touch typing, where I don't have to look at the keyboard, where, like, I could type and said, look at you. uh, and I looked at some programs to do, but it's the time investment. Too
Well,
much things to do.
I think it probably would be markedly harder at this
Oh
point.
yeah. Oh yeah.
You've already established a
Correct.
way of typing, and you'd have to sort of relearn.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to make inordinate effort to do, and I know I can do it. I've done other things that changing habits. I know it's possible, but I do know the price and the time investment involved. I'd probably have to spend every day at it, a couple of hours a day, for about a month, probably. Yeah. So big investment. But anyway, I'm happy enough, except lately my typing has gone, like, from worse to bad. So yeah. So it's all good, though. It's all good. But it's amazing, though, how things come about, and we don't know, unfortunately. So
Yes, it's true.
yeah.
So, okay, this is interesting. The thing that you were just saying.
Erica, can you hold on to that thought for just one moment? Give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
Okay.
If I take the phone with me, I'll lose connection.
Oh, okay.
All right, I survived. I'm back. You were gonna say. You were gonna say.
The what you said in your quote where we were talking about typing, but the attune yourself to the perfection or the already existing perfection rather than trying to create it. That was something I was thinking about the other day. I was talking to mom about it. I said, so I can't remember if I told you the guy Cavern, the
Yeah.
relaxing
The
voice.
young faced one.
Yes. Yes, the one that I was completely incapable of drawing. Um, he he has this musical project. He is a musician by trade, but he's not typically like in front of people. So
Yeah, he's not a performing musician. Yeah.
writes, as far as I understand it, he doesn't talk about it a lot, but as far as I understand it, he writes music for TV, for movies.
Wow.
But he started this musical project, is what he calls it, a couple years ago, where he created this band, which is really just him, but this like sort of alter ego person. Um, and the band is called Echoist. And there's this whole really
Wow.
story about that. He said that he took that from the story, the Greek myth of Narcissus and Echo.
Right.
The term, I mean, you always hear the term narcissist. It's rare to hear the term echoist. And the
Yes.
echoist is the opposite of narcissist, that, it's someone who like takes on, is so empathic that
Yeah.
they sort of lose their own voice and just take on
Yeah.
the voices of
Yeah.
others,
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
take on the
Yeah. Yeah.
personality.
It's gotten the modern is the empath, but
Right, right. It's
it's
sort of,
distortion. It's distortion.
well, and that was his point, was that seeing it as a negative thing, that this whole musical project for him was a way to express and kind of revisit this point in his life where he felt like he did not have a voice.
Mm.
And so that's why he called it echoist. And so
Was not heard. Like Echo. Echo was not heard by Narcissus.
that Echo was doomed to only be able to repeat back the things that someone would say to her. She could never say or express her own thoughts. She was forced to repeat back the last thing that someone had said to her. And so it's really like you don't have your own voice. You're sort of taking on the voice of everyone else rather than having your own. And so he wrote this song that I had heard before, but it has come back up into my mind because he was recently, last week, he got shortlisted on this list of finalists to perform at a music festival in the UK. And he was really excited about it. And so I was like, revisiting his music, and I hadn't listened to it in a while. And one of the songs that so it's, he does in with Echoist, it's like hardcore rock, like metal,
Wow.
screaming kind of. And because he said, this is sort of a healing process for me, of being able to express in this sort of like taking this part of you that feels like it's been trapped down in there and letting it just express and go crazy. And so
Nice.
the song, I think it's called Split. And it's so fascinating because I have said over the course of my healing journey, multiple years ago, where I was really dealing with anger issues, with big time anxiety. One of the reasons that I really started down the path of trying to dig into what's going on with me, how can I grow, learn, heal, do all these different things was because I was experiencing these outbursts of anger and this
Wow.
I kept calling it I called it my Jekyll and Hyde syndrome. It was like
Yeah.
this other completely other part of me would just take over.
Yeah.
I I would have no control or no say of what was happening, and then all of a sudden it would be over, and you're kind of picking up the pieces, going, "What did I just say?"
I hear you. I've been there, Erica. I've been there. I know exactly what you mean.
Scary,
Exactly.
and it's weird because you feel like there's this whole other part of yourself that
Very
is
distressing. Yes.
it's just like in there, and it just has free reign to come out and do whatever it wants.
Yeah.
And that's really what this song is about. And he talks about Jekyll and Hyde and about having this other part of you that you're sort of in constant fear of coming out or of creating destruction or of pulling you down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I was saying to mom that it's been so interesting to listen to that and kind of revisit the way that my Jekyll and Hyde syndrome, how I felt about it when that was occurring versus
Yeah.
how I look at it now. And I said, I think one of the most fascinating things to me is recognizing. I mean, we were talking about this with the whole crescent moon painting, recognizing that you are basically, I think, what it came down to was I recognize now that there is no part of me which needs to be fixed. There's no part of me that is not whole.
Yes.
Every single part of me, including Mr. Hyde, is valuable and serves a.
Yes.
The difference is, and I said that, I mean, this takes on a whole new meaning with talking about capital L love and its synonymousness with appropriateness. But I said to mom the other day, the difference, I think, the big differentiator for me is recognizing that while all of those parts of me are there for a reason, they serve a purpose. Ego serves an appropriate purpose.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Or Mr. Hyde serves an appropriate purpose. The difference, the differentiator is appropriateness.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
When those aspects get totally out of control and disconnect from appropriateness and impeccability, that's when it becomes something that can be problematic. But the aspect itself
No.
has
Exactly.
with
Exactly.
sadness,
Exactly.
all of it is
Exactly. Exactly.
valuable
Exactly.
and good and there for a reason.
Yes. Context.
Yeah. And that's been so, I was just like reflecting on
Liberating.
how huge of a thing that has been for me to recognize that all of the parts
Yeah.
of me, the process of learning and growing is not to remove old parts of you to fit.
No. 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 No.
That
No. No.
it is not this like patchwork piecemeal process of like doing it's recognizing that what you are, who you are, is already perfect. The
Yes.
only thing that needs to be tweaked is the appropriateness of how these things are expressed and how they're
And used and interconnected.
right. Right.
Yes. So I think a large part of this is to understand. Let's take anger. To understand that anger is something which is typically a problem when it is contextually inappropriate.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that is the problem with anger. It starts to get immersed in its own bubble of contextual appropriateness, and it assumes that it's okay.
Right.
Yeah. So it becomes validated within the bubble.
Yes.
Now, if we maintain anger in a bubble, then
Right.
anger, when it emerges, it maintains that bubble. In other words, if that bubble has very solid walls, it
Right.
sticks there. Now, as we understand, what we want to do is remove the walls between anger and non-anger. Yeah?
Mm.
And in other words, that anger isn't in its own little special sub bubble in the toolbox. like there's this protected case inside it that you've got to unlock to get. No, that makes anger only something that can exist within its own bubble. So it comes along with the bubble. When you break down the barriers and say anger is just a tool like anything else, like any other tool, like patience, like joy, like a smile. There's no, you're only going to smile when it's appropriate. But anger, because it's repressed, comes out and then it becomes inappropriate because it brings the bubble with it.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Limited the bubble.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So we need to defang it by saying, hey, you know what? I can be angry anytime if it's appropriate. It's not a problem. It's only a problem if I bring the contextual limitation with it that restricts my awareness. Yeah. Now, let's look at why we might want to do that. What's the payoff? Did I show you my payoff page?
I don't think so.
Oh, I love this payoff page where I basically put the squeeze on the worry pots. No, I didn't show you? No.
I think so.
The poor worry pots, I give them a hard time in that course. I'll show you in a second. So what's the payoff? Is because the payoff when we look at anger, when it runs away with itself, is that it's kind of like a way of avoiding many unpleasant truths and avoiding many extra effort or efforts. What am I doing? Yeah. Excuse me. And then that's a big deal. That's a very big deal, right? So when I can kind of let it all go, I don't have to be extra diplomatic. I don't have to take the long way around to go slowly, get to where I'm trying to go, and so on, right? Does that make sense? It saves me a lot of effort.
Right.
There are a lot of payoffs. Yeah, here we go. There are a lot of payoffs for anger. Now, okay, these are payoffs for stress and worry, but it's many of them are going to be the same, right? So I mean, this page really is a let's see what comes before this. I'll also get here from the beginning and see. Discerning the complexity, module 3.
Okay.
And there's all the contents. Seriously, who do you think we're fooling? I like this Vincent type picture. Yes, almost.
I do. Yeah.
Instead of the swirls, it's got the little lines though. It's very interesting. All right. So what's the payoff or motivation? Yeah, you can start to read through this. Yeah, I mean, well, you read a few and see. Just read a bit. You don't have to read it all because it's a lot. Yeah.
Attention, comfort, caution, importance, priority.
All right. So I was going to pause you there. Let's take this in the context of what's the payoff for getting angry,
Right.
and losing it a little bit, right? Getting lost in anger, but that's what we're talking about here. Yes, right?
Yeah, all of them for sure. And I mean, attention is such an interesting, that's a really interesting one.
Yes. Yes, it is. It is. Let's just start there. Let's just start on attention. Exactly. This is really fun for discernment exercise here, because with anger, we can bring attention to the fact that we're feeling pain, we're feeling upset, we're feeling hurt, we're feeling unheard. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Not necessarily attention from a hierarchy point of view. Right. Look at me. Sometimes, yes. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to anxiety and worry, absolutely, that gets people that spotlight attention. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Comfort again makes you feel comfortable. It's amazing. Yeah. In many different ways, but it's a poor way of getting there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Caution. I don't know if it applies with anger, but with worry, you're trying to apply caution, which, okay, that's actually a good payoff, But again, it makes you important. Yes, anger can certainly make you feel important. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're prioritizing things, getting heard. All right, you see this. I mean, we could spend ages on this. It's quite the sheet here. But I really wanted to make the point about having so much in here that you're getting a lot of payoffs here, and some of them are actually valid, but most of them are just crappy. Cry for help, manipulation, righteousness, all of this guy's judgment, leveraged implication, so on and so on, and that's not cool. So the idea was to understand for yourself what the motivations for whatever the indulgence is. When we are acutely aware of the indulgence motivation, it's very hard to indulge.
Right.
It's very hard to indulge, So, I mean, to me, anger is usually just a way of us trying to force an opinion.
That's interesting.
And it's like, hello, how is that cool?
Right. Right.
How is this cool? And once you see it in that way, it's almost impossible to be angry again.
Right.
It's like when I said to people about impatience, I leveraged the fact that you're expecting the world to operate on your timetable. Does that not make you arrogant?
Right. Right.
Oh, fuck, yes. And now, because they cannot be deliberately arrogant, it prevented them from essentially being impatient anymore.
Yeah.
So I love this with leverage. When
Yeah.
we understand the crappy motivation and we are acutely aware of it, acute is the word.
Yeah.
It changes. It changes.
So this is association management to me.
Exactly. Thank you. Exactly.
Yeah, I was thinking about association management again because of Catherine's podcast. It's amazing to me how many things come up out of this.
Good.
He
Yeah.
was talking about
It is a predicted consequence of what we do, by the way.
yeah.
That the more we start to see the connections, the more we see connections.
Yes.
The more we connect, the more we see connections. So after a while, this is the dictionary of power. Your brain is connecting. You are able to connect anything to anything, and not just in 6 degrees, but directly sometimes. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. He was talking about one of the words that somebody gave him to talk about was collywobbles, which I had never heard before.
Where did I see this?
Oh, have you? Yeah, I had never heard this before, but he said he looked it up and it's like the term for when your stomach gets kind of wound up in knots or like fluttery, specifically associated with sort of being anxious. So it's like,
Yeah. It's the butterflies, which is like nervous excitement. Collywobbles is anxious. Wow.
like you would have the collywobbles in your stomach or whatever. And he started talking about that with anxiety, and he said, I like this idea of like taking a sort of serious negative thing and just giving it a different name that
Relating it. Yes.
to just thinking about it completely differently. And he said, maybe we can do the same thing. Yeah, he said, I think I'm just going to call anxiety collywobbles from now on because it just like makes you laugh. It's funny.
Yeah.
And he said, I think I'm going to do the same thing with depression. And he came up with the term blubber dumps for depression. He was like, I don't think you can ever say, I've just got a case of the blubber dumps and not laugh.
Exactly.
And about how incredibly powerful association management is. Oh, I love it. The grobble womps.
I don't know what it refers to, but when you said it first, I thought, wow, this is the profile page of the guy who drew that picture, the edgy picture. Right. So now I have to see what this is. I just saw it and it sounded similar to what you were saying, but this could easily apply to I don't know, insecurity. I've got the grobble womps. Yeah.
Grobble womps. I love it.
Yeah.
Yellow beef that's big and hairy with a scowl, always plastered on its face. That's something in my water.
Oh, you missed it there. Anyway.
They're powerful. You've had it there. They'll mash you up and be blessed by even then it might go wrong, because the grubble wasps are strong, and their cuddles will still match.
Wow.
Oh gosh, that was
I don't know if this is the parable is to make kids go and get a bath or what. I don't know.
so it's too funny. The grobble.
It's funny for adults, but I don't know if that's going to be so funny for a kid.
Very funny for a kid. No.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. I think that many write children's stories more for adults than for children.
Yep. It's true.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's very, very interesting. But anyway, it was the animation and the poetry. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. It kind of looked like Carl at first, but Carl,
Yeah, a little bit. Carl may be distant relatives of the grubble bumps. Quite possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this. And again, the power of, in our power conceptions, renaming.
Yes.
Renaming is an incredible skill, and it changes the world just like that.
Right.
Unknown into moreness. What's the difference? Same thing.
Right.
But it's transformative forevermore. You cannot think the same. So I think this too, when it comes to things like anger, if we can succeed in renaming them and say, oh, wait a second, is this actually anger or is it aggression?
Right.
I'm okay being angry, but I'm not okay being aggressive. Well, for some people they are, but or is it bullying? Holy shit. Oh, fuck. Now you just killed my anger. Damn it. Now I can't be angry anymore. Because really, again, for the most part, anger is exactly that. It's bullying.
It's true.
So again, we leverage our inner impeccability. I can get angry and justify it, but I can't justify bullying.
Right.
Yeah. Occasionally, maybe, sometimes you have to put a bit of pressure, but now I'm not bullying, I'm pressuring, which is a little bit different, and, just, or like earnest encouragement, which, yes, you have to exercise a bit of authority. There's a massive difference between exercising authority and bullying, yes?
Yes.
You can exercise authority and bully, and exercise authority and not bully. You end up doing the same things more or less, but there's a flavor difference, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, one you kind of give people a choice, and the other one you don't.
Yeah.
When you really can object if you really want to and make an ass out of yourself and everybody else and cause unpleasantness if you really want to, it's your choice to be stupid. But the other one, you don't give them a choice to be stupid, and that's not good. Yes.
True.
It's very amazing when you start to relabel things, how they transform, yes? So when we see this as the bigger abstract skill, and that to me, again, I try to make this a constant policy, to look at the skill behind the skill behind the skill till you get to the baseline one. And that's the one that for me goes into the dictionary of power. Like in all this case, we see the value of what these guys are doing. But if I can abstract it to their core skill, which is in this case renaming, yes, or relabeling, it's an incredible power. And then we realize the power of our language, how essentially language is just a continuous process of labeling the world. So pay attention to your language. It's power. Yeah. Spells aren't called spells for nothing.
Right.
It just blows your mind. It just blows your mind to realize how much there is.
It's true.
Have you had a psychic experience, by the way? I know I'm jumping topic here a little bit, but it's on my mind.
Well, what do you mean by psychic experience, I guess?
Anything that might qualify. Anything.
Well, I mean, it depends on what you would call psychic.
Right. It doesn't matter. All right. So anything that, somebody who Phil or is it Dan? Because
Who? What?
my brain is sticking on names now. Holy macaroni. Your father-in-law.
Oh, Don.
Don. I call him Dan. Don. Anything that Don might call woo-woo or nonsense, or because I imagine that he's not into anything that's in that field, right?
I have had, I would say, well, yes. So definitely there have been unexplainable woo-woo sort of related things that have happened to
Oh,
me.
you've had a few, yeah, but they weren't from you,
Well,
right? Like the thing in the room with the bed and the markings, right? Yeah.
so aside from those,
So let me reframe my question, right? Because those were the perception or the experience of it emanating from elsewhere.
right.
But that's, I guess, supernatural, you could say, or whatever. But to me, psychic experience is when you are the originator of it. See what I mean?
Right. I mean,
All right, it's related. It's related. Yeah. Anything, doesn't matter.
I yeah, I mean, if I am the original,
You see what I mean? Rather than you being the perceiver of something that's from elsewhere. Now, your you know what? It's very hard to say originator. No, cancel that. Originator is not the ideal term here. I mean more where you are the principal agent of it. Let's put it that way. I don't know how to say this. But anyway, just say what you have. I'll get back to why I'm asking in a moment.
I have had, I think I've shared this with you before, and it's actually been a while since I've had this happen, but for several years, yeah, for a period of several years, I experienced off and on, I know I've shared this with you before, but like at night when I would be trying to go to bed, I would hear like I don't even know how to describe it, like other people's voices talking in my head to the point that I couldn't go to sleep, and it was like really bothering me. I would just be laying there trying to go to sleep, and I would just be hearing these like people talking, and it would be about all sorts of random things, and like names would be thrown out, and sometimes it would be words strung together that didn't make any sense at all, but other times it would be like somebody was just sitting there talking. It was really weird. And I tried to like remember some of them and write them down and look up, like especially names. When I would hear names, I would try to look up like, does this person actually exist? Um, and I never really got with it. But that, I've had that, which was unusual. And I mean, interestingly, it only ever has happened when I am falling asleep and sort of
Oh,
when you're in that, oh,
the hypnagogic state. Yeah.
yes, when you're in that state, you know. kind of, um, but I mean, I've had lots of experiences where there have been things that are what I would call like knowings,
Yeah.
where you just feel like
That's where I'm heading. That's where I'm heading. That's where I'm heading.
you have no explanation for why you know this thing, but you just do.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and
Yes.
we have talked about that before, that one of the challenges for me has been how do I tell the difference between something? Because you have said, every person has experienced something where you would vow with 100% certainty that something is this particular way. It turns out to be wrong, right? So how do you know the difference between something that is really a true knowing and something that you think is a knowing, but might not really be? But there have been lots of things that for me have been knowings that have been corroborated, like I have discovered later.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, that really is the way it was, and I have no explanation for why I knew this. It
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah. Again, the way we don't need to have things defined as absolute truth or not.
right,
We can just simply take it under advisement.
right.
Yeah. and look at it and when we stop looking at it in the context of is it true or not, then we say, well, what other value is there? Oh, it's making me aware of possibility, of option. Oh, wow, I never even considered this before to be something, and so on and so forth, right? So there's lots of value to it. Other than the obvious, is it true or not? It's not, that's sometimes not relevant at all. So this about this knowingness, I call it direct perception.
I like it.
As a greater category. Yes. So in other words, and this is a big deal for Don Juan, right? He calls it seeing, I call it perceiving, because seeing, and even Don Juan said, seeing is limited because it's visual, and only because we visually dominated that he called it that. But I think if it had been suggested to him to call it perceiving, he would have said yes. It's direct perception, right? The direct perception. A transcension, in other words, a perception which transcends the limitation of description, time, space, etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is a subversion of it going through the filter of life.
Yeah.
Direct perception, right? You see, and I think Vincent, when he saw energy directly. And this is really interesting too. I have other friends who also have tinnitus, persistent tinnitus.
Yeah.
And, they have visions and experiences also. And now I have to be very cautious with people who have visions and see stuff and all this, right? Because in Sedona, every second person has it.
Right.
And on some of them, boy, I'll bet every dollar it's bullshit.
Yeah.
Because you could just see it in their personality.
It's so interesting that, to me, I think I've shared this with you, that any experience I have had like that, it has never been a visual thing.
Interesting.
I have never experienced what I would call anything close to a vision. It's always auditory for me, which is really interesting.
Absolutely. Now, this makes also sense, right? Now, I mean, it's just part of it. And some people experience smells and all sorts of stuff, right? But all of it, I think, is that we are living in an artificial reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
So after all, at some point in this, there are going to be glitches in the program because it's all artificial.
Yeah.
So those direct perceptions, when you are not specifically making an effort to directly perceive, they are simply where you are glitching things through the glitches in the program, like in the Matrix, right? I thought that was very powerful, that those little glitches that let you see what's going on. I think this is very, very powerful. Now, though, the where I'm heading with this is that I've been sort of a bit anti-woo-woo most of my life. That most of the people who claim to have all this stuff, I don't know, it just always put me off big time. And even now I default in bullshit, because I think, unfortunately, mostly it is. Yes. But just because mostly it is doesn't mean always. Yes. And I personally can say, simply because of one experience, I've only had one that I can say certainly for sure is that I cannot dismiss it out of hand because I know it's not to be so, right? So I have this personal, but the experience, did I tell you about it or not? The vision I had of my father in his surgery.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I don't like to talk to it much because it's a tricky subject, right? Unfortunately, so, but maybe it's also good, I suppose. I don't know. But anyway, but, what I was thinking about is that I've been a bit anti-woo-woo most of my life, I guess, coming from that, because it put me off that experience. I didn't want to have more of it. But yet that's, it came up in a discussion with Bina when we were going over a traumatic experience when she was a girl and looking at the value of it when you perspective shift.
Interesting.
And to say the value here lies in the prevention of you going on a path that you otherwise might have gone onto.
Interesting.
So that's a very nuanced perception. Yes. Yeah. For instance, Bina said, wow, if I hadn't had this, it was a negative experience for her, I might have become a manipulator or a bully, or most likely would have. Or basically she had to, not speak up.
Yeah.
and sort of, the people were taking the situation and abusing it for their own, personal power, political ends, right?
Right.
Dominance and hierarchy and all this nonsense. But she would have had to rail against and fight the entire society and establishment, essentially. And had she done that, she would have gotten into those rebel children, you know what I'm talking about? And they live miserable lives, right? It would have been a disaster for her to be that way, because especially if you're honest and you are always insisting on the truth, boy, you just end up in a thoroughly inappropriate, miserable life. Yes, you go nowhere. So it's not appropriate. But how do you tell a child, to be hung up on truth is not appropriate? You can't say it that way. So this way, though, prevents you from going down that path and developing other paths, which, yes. So now I said, fine, it prevents you from going on that path. But look also what happens. In the reaction, she says, basically, I sort of shut down and went into my own bubble. I said, that's not necessarily appropriate either, because it's excessive
Right.
counterbalance.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I take my example, yes, having that ability to directly perceive what's going on, it's probably was the result, or it's the psychic equivalent of discernment. Yes, and particularly the discernment of people, motivations, and how it relates to them. Right. I mean, if you look at that context as an explanation of my father,
Right.
it's massive. I mean, not just the sort of, because there's a nuance of the power involved, the abuse of power, being the doctor with the patient, and the thrill of it, and all of the stuff, right? I mean, the power of with a needle and all this nonsense, right? So he's a total megalomaniac. So it really gives you a more depth, nuance into his psychology, right? But like I said, if this is not tempered by a greater discernment, it could lead to all sorts of inappropriateness.
Right.
I mean, for instance, like I think now I could have used it for great blackmail purposes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Very wonderful. I mean, I could have had whatever I wanted. But then again, too, now, if I get everything that I want from that point of view, I live a whole different life. No,
Right.
a very, very different life. So, that would be, not that I think I would have done that then, but I'm just saying, for instance. So though I think, though, in the same case with Bina, what is appropriate as a child is very different to what's appropriate later on. And likewise, the excessive counter reaction is appropriate temporarily, maybe, but also, yes, don't go down the negative path, but also your remedy might be inappropriately excessive at the same time. Yes. So I was thinking to just be aware of this, to say, okay, well, now things are different. I can bring it back. I don't need to shut it off anymore, right? And this ability to perceive directly, Don Juan talks about it a lot, right? Now, he says, the way to do it is, he doesn't really get too much in control, but it's inner silence, essentially. And then really you couple it with an intent. You want to know something, you set that intent, you have an earnest question. Essentially, that's it. That's related back to the questions, right? You ask an earnest question in silence, and then you get your answer. Now, in your case, probably be audio, others probably be more visual or whatever. It doesn't matter. It can be in many different ways. But this is really interesting that you can get an answer in ways which are more direct. Yes. And this is a powerful thing to be aware of. So it's something that, just to cultivate as a habit, instead of always thinking it through to the end. Sometimes the way to get there is, if that hasn't worked, then to say, let me do the exact opposite of thinking it through to the end, which is to not think at all.
Yeah.
Right. So in the same way as we take thinking through to the end, we have now got to do it in reverse, which is silence. Yes, not thinking. It's a very powerful additional technique. Yes. So which also leads to a different point, which all the thinking it through to the end, and the dictionary of power. Oh, great.
Okay, I got it. I just reached the last of my thoughts there for the notes.
Yeah. Sorry, I should pay more attention.
No, you're
when I was saying, when we light up a conception in the brain, and then we light up others, and then we connect them, all right, eventually we'll have this in the whole brain. At that point, I feel we are going to get to a different way of accessing knowledge. And Don Juan calls it silent knowledge,
I like it.
where you don't have to go through the cognitive processes because it's all already engaged. Now, he didn't say about the brain being lit up. I'm going into the neurophysics of it, right? But so I'll just keep on my thing. But essentially, this is, to me, I feel that we won't have to go, step. We can just access directly. In other words, we are going to have a computer that can access all of its available information and immediately, because the tagging, the access process is so refined that it's almost instantaneous. Yeah, because we've taken the 6 degrees of separation, and because we've got an abstract hierarchy, it's essentially one.
Yeah.
Right? We go one step, and there we are. That's it. We can make that immediate connection because we can connect anything to anything after a while, right? Yeah. Because our hierarchy, our search hierarchy, is a great big hierarchy. Yes,
Yeah.
it's got many concepts in it, and it covers the entirety of everything that's underneath. Yes. Yeah. So we might not be able to know everything in detail, but we can construct an abstract categorization that covers everything. Right? Because, okay, we've got awareness, we've got understanding, so on and so forth. At some point, it's a list of categories, and you've got other.
Right.
Covers everything.
Yeah.
Other may be the biggest category, we don't know, but nonetheless, if your other categories are in your daily life experience, are covering substantial ground, yeah, and others seldom used, then you've got something that actually does get you to access knowing everything,
right,
without knowing everything, right? So it's sort of it's in a way, it's a bit of a myth that we can't know everything. We can via the abstract, yes?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really interesting, really, really interesting. So my point is that, this direct access, this is a big deal. And to open ourselves up to understanding that what we consider, say, psychic, is simply a different way of processing and accessing and utilizing the inherent system that already is. Yes? Yeah. That's very important, I feel.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Very, very powerful.
I like it.
Very, very powerful. But it's to set the intent to open up to perceiving in different ways. Yeah. So again, we've both experienced this. And now we come back to trust. That's the point that I wanted to make. I did not have trust in that experience to say, oh, it has to make sense in some way. All I could do was basically relate and be a little bit put out that I had felt my father's sexual excitement at this weirdness, and that I didn't care for. That I physically felt this, I was experiencing it from his point of view, which was a direct, involvement of me. I was pulled into it. I really experienced that as if I was him, which is really interesting. Yeah. And this was kind of, uncomfortable, disturbing, but had I had the discernment to see, hey, you can't take this person. It doesn't say anything about you. It doesn't mean you're a pervert just because you were experiencing his freaking weirdness, so this was really potent. This is really interesting. So my point is that, with appropriate discernment, we start to look at how does this make sense? It makes sense with my intent and desire to know people. Well, that's me knowing my father, so it's, or knowing people with their motivations, and also getting an inside view of the privateness of their motivations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's just interesting. Yeah. Isn't that fascinating?
It is. It's really interesting.
Yeah. But I want to bring it back. I want to bring that ability back.
Great.
That's what I'm heading at here.
And I think, for me, as a kid, any kind of experience that fell outside of the norm for me was scary.
Exactly.
I thought it was like some evil, like, really scary thing that I needed to be afraid of. And especially since thinking things through and coming to this conclusion for myself of there not being a force of evil, that, everything relates back to good in some way, that it all makes sense. That totally changes those experiences for me, that, this is not something that is being driven from some evil force
Exactly.
or whatever. It's just something that I don't understand. It's something that I don't understand.
Yeah.
And it absolutely can have an appropriate use.
Yes.
Like you said,
Unknown to Moreness. Yeah.
yeah, if you're applying discernment and, then you can
Yeah.
absolutely find the
Yeah.
appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah. To see strange as scary is a terrible, terrible disease.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. It limits people to so much.
Yeah.
With Donna, she has many visions and experiences and unusual stuff, and she would default to seeing it as scary, unpleasant, troublesome. And now I kind of really would kind of hammer on that point all the time. But why is it automatically scary? Yeah, but it just is. And so now she's starting to see and she's been having similar experiences to before, but now they're magical, they're awesome, they're phenomenal, they're profound. So this is a big deal. We need to trust that it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need to trust that it makes sense. This is absolutely critical in terms of giving us that, at least the pause to assess
Right.
whether it actually is whatever, right? And not just to default to a particular thing. It may be scary, but I can't default to it being scary.
Yeah.
Is to unhook from default assessments.
Right.
All assessments need to be
Yeah.
deliberate, yes? And thoughtful assessments. And they need to be assessments, not reactions.
Yes.
Yeah. And we want to train ourselves to assess, not to react. Now,
Yeah.
if I don't have time, fine, then maybe I'll react. But even that is dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Take for instance, in many of the science fiction stories, they come into contact with some alien race, and their default reaction is just scary. Oh, kill it.
Right. Right.
And then, of course, the story is, well, they don't succeed in killing it, or and then whatever they discover, well, actually, this is a benign species, and you were just being a jerk, yeah. And you could have, wiped out the whole species, and just because of your fearful, idiotic reactions, right?
Wasn't that Ender's Game?
Oh, there's plenty of them. Yes, Ender's Game is a very particular one on this, where, yes, the buggers, and because they look like bugs and all this, and yes, that takes this to the nth degree.
Yeah.
Yes, to look at it from the inside of how they were reacting to it. Yeah, and then likewise, the buggers, the queen did the same thing, assuming them, and it's a whole big mess. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Defaults, right? To not have defaults,
Yeah.
to have deliberate defaults of deliberation,
Yeah. Absolutely.
right? So we want a default, but the default of deliberation.
Yeah. Whoops.
You have frame of perception in your dictionary of power, I'm assuming, yes?
Probably, but
Well, you can add frame jumping. Right? We want to be able to jump outside the frame, yeah?
here we go. Right.
That's very important. It's very helpful also. Exactly in this case too now. We want to jump outside the frame of our typical perception.
Yeah.
And say, hey, you know what? When you look at it from outside the frame, changes everything. But just to be open to this idea that we can perceive a solution, answer, resolution, and insight and awareness without going through the typical usual mechanisms. directly, in other words, this is a very powerful thing. This is a very, very powerful thing.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's knowing without knowing, as it were.
I like it. Yeah.
By implication there, it's knowing without knowing how or why, right?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's very, very cool. Just to be aware that this is a possibility. So now, instead of those, voices, when you hear them, to go into it with a different perspective, to, in other words, be more capital R receptive to it,
Right.
to trust and insist, oh, it makes sense somehow. Let me figure out how. Now, we may default to say, I'm hearing voices, but I can't understand. Maybe that's the point. Frame jump. See my point, right? Not to get stuck in the obvious thing, but to say, maybe that's the point.
Yeah.
And you're getting a message that's in a higher conceptuality. It's a sophisticated message here. See?
Yeah.
I mean, look at the thing with my father again. The point there was to experience something from the inside.
Right.
It's not the experience itself, but from the inside.
Yeah.
I mean, this just happens to be whatever was available, because it was relatively physically close. And, the intensity makes it, I would assume from a broadcast point of view, because it was close and the intensity made it a broadcast, right? Otherwise, it might not, I might never experience that in general with that kind of intensity. Or
Yeah.
not, you're not likely to be close by. Let's put it that way,
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah. I mean, even if you're in the room next door, if you're staying over at somebody's house, they're not likely to engage in their whatever weird things in the room next door, while you're visiting. They'll wait until you're away, likely, you would imagine. So.
Whoops. Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. It's time. It's time.
It is. I know. I got my snack reminder. I was like, oh, man.
But we got extra. See, I was hoping, because you said, oh, no problem, I can come back later. So then I said, well, good. So we can now go till the time. We'll just get extra time. So I purposely said, I'm not going to remind you when it's whatever, 2 hours later. So I stole some extra time. You set me up for it.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a big deal. It's a big deal, right?
It is. Yeah. This was such an interesting discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. To not assume the obvious default assumption.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Assume non-assumption. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh man, I'm gonna have to go back and go through all of these notes, and
Yes.
there's so much in here, but
There's a lot in here. There's a lot in here. Yes.
I love it.
Yes, me too. Oh, did you have any more drawings, by the way?
No, I didn't get to do any since we were in the city doing birthday.
Right. Oh, real quick before you go. I'm reluctant to ask Kay directly if she can do the hedgie in the class, because if she can't, and it's maybe she can, but it's awkward for her to do. I don't want to put pressure on her and put her in an awkward spot. So that's why I'm curious.
I talked to her about it. She said that she had seen that you had sent something but hadn't gotten to look at it yet, and I told her what we had been working on and that you were hoping to get feedback from how this works with kids and everything. And she was like, oh, this sounds really cool. I would love to do this.
Brilliant. Oh, that would make me so happy. So all she has to do is take in her laptop and her phone.
Right.
And I would recommend she practices at home, with the mechanics. You sit next to it, hit the right button and, arrow and so on, and then read off the phone. I set it up that way. And then the kids can watch. And then because it's a slide too, they can watch and draw. And when everybody's finished, then you go to the next one. It depends. Maybe they're too eager to hear the story and you got to read the whole story and then you draw. I don't know. That's what I need to find out. But what I would ask too, if she does do this, that she photograph all of the pictures, every single one for me. Doesn't matter how terrible, how bad, every single one, please, please, please. And you just send it on Messenger. The phone does it automatically. Yeah. Okay. I love it. So if she would do that, boy, it would really help me out, because like I said, I put all of this up and so far I've got one response. So I'm hoping I'll get more, but Kay would be absolutely the perfect one to do this. Yeah.
Well, hopefully she'll be able to.
Yeah. And also I would say that this is likely going to be a project that will take, I don't know how long the attention span lasts, but a whole morning at least.
Right.
I would imagine, or at least if you want to stretch it out, and probably make it into a whole week's long project, a 1 week project. Yeah. So if she's looking to fill up time, this will fill up time quite nicely. Okay, you gotta go. Okay, thanks for mentioning that. It's a big deal. It's a very big deal. All right.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. Appreciate it.
Oh, what a pleasure. Bye-bye. Look forward to Thursday.